Hello and welcome to Current Wave. I'm your host, Ayla Wayman, and in this podcast, we meander through our shared delusions and stumble into ethereal shit talking as we dive into the waves of the human experience. I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope that you enjoy the ride. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Current Wave. I'm so happy to have you here and to be sharing this guest with you, Jaclyn Hodes. And we go into our story and our origins together, but it was really beautiful to have her on. I've known her for over a decade and worked with her back in the day in New York, kind of like my fledgling ventures into interning and working in fashion and being in her zone. And it was really cool to touch in with her again in this way and kind of hear all of the ways that our paths have aligned and been on kind of this same wavelength for a long time, which is really cool and really beautiful to have like long-standing acquaintances and friends and these trajectories that bring us into all of these different webs of experience. And so, yeah, Jaclyn and I both went to Sarah Lawrence College. We both worked in fashion, starting out styling, which is really cool, and then sort of had this reimagining of our visions and our lives that was brought on by really going deep with Kundalini Yoga, which is really the turning point for me in a lot of ways. Kundalini is where I started having a lot of visions and clarity about where I was supposed to go. And that was true for Jaclyn as well. So it's really cool to have her on the show and get to hear about her path and her journey. We go a lot of different places, but the things that we come back to again and again are cultivating the vision, allowing it to kind of come to us, to shepherd it, to midwife it, to bring these ideas that we have into being and to stay with them for the long run. And really listening to what wants to be created, what wants to be made, what wants to be brought into being, instead of kind of like pushing and forcing our will onto something, allowing ourselves to be in conversation with it and to have that listening, receptive energy as something that we build into our lives and our dreams and the things that we're creating. Easier said than done, and yet a really, really important, potent part of becoming, of creating. And so I loved that she really was in that zone with this and really learning to listen to the soul, learning to listen to these deeper threads that are carrying us, these deeper things that are asking us to come into such deep contact with ourselves and our path. And our soul's path is not necessarily easy work, but I think it's the work that we're here to do. And the deeper we go with that, the more we listen, I think the more that our soul gets out of this lifetime and this experience. And so I think that Jaclyn has a lot of beautiful words for these times and for people who are on their path and meandering on their way and perhaps doing a lot of different things until they find the thing that really sticks. And even then, it changes and transpires and transforms. And that's part of it. That's like this human experience. And I think Jaclyn is such a lovely, incredible example of that. So I'm so grateful to have her on the show. And I hope that you gain so much from this conversation. Thank you for being here. And if you appreciate this conversation, please leave a review, send it to a friend, share it wherever you like to share things. That is how we grow and how we get to share these messages and stories with more people. So thank you so much and really happy to have you here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Current Wave. I'm really excited to have our guest today, Jaclyn Hodes. And yeah, Jaclyn, welcome. How are you?
Good. So good to be here with you.
Amazing. I'm very excited to get into our conversation and hear about your journey. And yeah, I want to introduce Jaclyn. Jaclyn Hodes is a visionary creator of the line A Wave Awake and a pioneer in sustainable fashion whose journey began with a deep spiritual connection to nature and evolved into a profound exploration of beauty, embodiment, and consciousness. A Wave Awake was founded in 2012, and the brand emerged as one of the first exclusively plant-dyed collections, rooted in Jaclyn's commitment to leaving a light footprint and honoring the earth and her in her creative expression. Jaclyn studied arts and humanities at Sarah Lawrence College and after moved into styling, consulting, and working as a fashion editor with formative experiences at the Sorbonne, FIT, and the Met's Costume Institute. In the creation of her line, Jaclyn brought a really unique reverence for silhouette and storytelling to her work. Her iconic slip dresses, infused with the healing essence of botanical dyes and shaped by the free spirits of the 1920s and 70s fashion, found their way onto icons such as Rihanna and Solange and many others. As her work deepened into feminine form, Ayurveda, Jungian depth psychology, and Kundalini Yoga, Jaclyn has evolved her work into Dreaming Life Awake, a multidimensional offering weaving color medicine, archetypal healing, and soulful embodiment into a path of personal and planetary transformation. Oh my gosh. So beautiful. So exciting to have you here and to kind of just feel into and tap into all of the spaces and places you have moved through and embodied over the years.
Yeah,
Um,
especially since we first encountered each other. I
yes,
think that was well over a decade ago, maybe a decade ago.
it was. Like, I think that I was in my very early 20s. And yeah, I found a posting Jaclyn had put when we both lived in New York and I was going to Sarah Lawrence also. We both happened to be Sarah Lawrence girls. And Um, yeah, I saw some posting. There used to be all of these like internship job board type things, and I saw it there. And I was like, oh my gosh, she went to Sarah Lawrence and is in fashion. Like, this is what I want to do. And so, yeah, I was sort of your intern. You were moving to Bali, and we were transitioning both, I think, in so many ways, but we connected and was able to begin kind of peeking into the realm of fashion through everything that you had built.
Yeah, thank you. And I also feel like there was no program at Sarah Lawrence for fashion,
No.
um, so to speak, at least when I was there. And so I felt like it still was a very formative education on how to kind of create your life and study and become passionate about what you were into, even if it wasn't all there present in the material. You could actually go and find your way through. Um, so yeah, I actually didn't study fashion Sarah Lawrence, but it kind of found me along the way, and I ended up obviously pursuing it quite deeply, but never really, foregoing all the humanities and social science background that we were coming from. So yeah, to meet you, it was like super resonant. There always feels like this deep soul bond with other graduates who I meet along the way, even if it's like decades later. It's a really cool thing, a thread to really connect on.
Yes, I agree. I love that. And I do think like in my experience that was sort of the beauty of Sarah Lawrence. Like it was so weird and you could really do like you could bring your own weird interests into the curriculum and sort of pursue them in very different ways than other educational systems. Like I did so many weird things while I was there, and I'm sure you kind of were bringing in your interests too because that's like what they encourage, especially at that time. Um, but yeah, I it is interesting because it does bring like a more holistic view almost to whatever you end up pursuing because they really encourage you to study a bunch of different things, even if you're not necessarily interested in them. And I feel like in the end, it's really useful and like helpful to have kind of this broad view that you're bringing into whatever work you decide to hone in on.
Yeah, it was really advanced in that way. I don't even know if they're like aware of that now, but I feel like that's what people
Right.
are like kind of advocating, the unlearning from the system and like the tracked
Mhm.
mindset, and actually broadening where you're still really becoming a specialist because you're focusing on something very deeply, but you're allowing to be inspired by other things. And they called it interdisciplinarian. Now it's just like what people are doing in their own way. They're finding pieces and like cobbling them together and creating their new like methodology, the way they make a collection. And I think it was a really, really like so incredible to be exposed to that and to be encouraged to do that at such a early stage in development. So yeah, because Sarah Lawrence was on that tip since I believe at least the 70s. They were in that way, maybe as early as the founding in the 1920s. But yeah, super grateful for those beginnings and to meet, you know, fellow Sarah Lawrence ladies and men along the way. It's always, yeah, super, super special.
It is special. It's an interesting place, and yeah, I think like this is kind of segueing into maybe a different entrance into the conversation, but it feels really apt of just like from that experience of being at Sarah Lawrence, like how did that where were you drawing into like the fashion world? How did that kind of come into your experience and um into your world? Like what kind of brought you into that realm? Because it wasn't something that they offered and like I had to kind of pursue that on my own time and find my own entrance, and it sounds like you did too. I'm curious about sort of that trajectory and part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I was always interested in fashion, and I remember my mom brought me to do fashion sketching classes. She found some woman to teach me,
Mhm.
and I must have been in middle school. It was quite early on. I would always like, play that I owned a store, that I was designing a collection. Like it was always, it must be like a past life strong thread that came through. And I even was remembering being surprised. My grandmother told me that that's what she had wanted to do. She'd wanted to go to FIT. Um, but I think that I'm really grateful I didn't get caught up in the traditional track of going to design school. I think for some
Mhm.
people, it's an incredible experience to go to RISD or Parsons or FIT and get like that deep formative education, and you're immediately making the patterns and draping and all of that. But I just wasn't 1,000% sure because I was also interested in psychology and philosophy and art history and dance and all the things that I got to experience at Sarah Lawrence. So
Mhm.
I'm
Wow.
glad that I had that like really, really well-rounded education. And I think I kept it alive. And I wasn't sure. It was kind of a guilty pleasure because once I got to Sarah Lawrence, I was like so nourished by like this really cool version of academia that was a bit
Yeah.
more flexible and free, but deep and like
Yeah.
serious still. And so I really enjoyed going there, and I was like making up for lost time. I felt like I didn't have that education at all. It didn't high school, we didn't touch on any of this, so I was just hungry for it. And so I just had fashion still as a guilty pleasure. And it wasn't until I went to Paris for my senior year to study abroad through a different program where I was at the Sorbonne. And then I just ended up meeting stylists that were working in Paris and getting sucked into that realm, since Paris is like such a it elevates that, it elevated fashion, it elevated everything to the realm of like being in a university of fashion. All around you everything was beauty, art, and the way that you would see people move down the street, and it was like the access to the showrooms and the culture of the fashion, like défilé, vernissage, all the things in art and
Mhm.
fashion. It was so palpable in the city. So it was like a really deep education that I couldn't ignore, that I finally immersed myself in and stopped resisting. Um, and then I was like, uh oh, what do I do? And I almost stayed and went to design school. And I was going
Mhm.
to, figure out transferring credits. And then I just felt pulled back to New York. It was kind of an irrational feeling. It felt like New York was about to slip away. and
Mm.
I felt like I needed to get back, or New York as I knew it would slip away. And then what was very interesting is that a month later, after I returned, kind of more prematurely than I thought, it was the date was the ticket that I was meant to return, but I thought I would for sure ignore it. I honored the ticket, went back, and September 11th happened. So New York as I knew it did really shift and change, and it was a bit
Right.
of a psychic feeling that I needed to come back to, you know, grasp a bit of it before it was too late. And it was not a very clear moment, but I felt called. And so I finished my last semester of Sarah Lawrence, and I didn't quite shake off the fashion influence that I brought with me from Paris. I just didn't pursue the design school there, and
Wow.
instead went back into the realm of like making art. And I was in sculpture class, and I was working with material, actually silks and velvets, in a
Mm.
sculptural way of creating these
Oh, amazing.
installations. Yeah. So, and then I was only out of school for 6 months when I got invited into the graduate program at FIT for costume and textile history. So
Mm.
that was
Amazing.
like the alternative to design school for me at
Yeah,
the time. So I naturally found my way in.
incredible. I love that so much. I mean, there's so many pieces there, but it's like those pivotal moments where we have like this weird sense of what to do, even if we really want to stay somewhere or do this thing. And we're like, no, I have to do this. And you going back to New York and having that sense of like everything's about to change. And then September 11th happening is like such a powerful moment. And I'm sure it was also like being in New York at that time, like being in the city, having that impact. I mean, it was like a global shift really happened then. And just like following
Yeah.
some knowing and then yeah, I mean that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to know if I made the right decision. I was going to have to go back to New York anyway. I
Yeah,
think it was a really scary time. It was a really
yeah,
like energetically heavy, toxic time, but my
yeah.
soul felt like I needed to experience it instead of avoiding it and being removed, because there was equal amount of kind of tensions in Paris that were building, that were feeling uncomfortable. And it wasn't just enjoying the beauty and the lights of Paris. I felt this very dark underbelly that was occurring there that
Mhm.
would be actually mirroring the feeling that I felt when I got back to New York. But I was with family and community, and so I kind of sunk back into that. And yeah, just I think that going back to school, it was a little bit premature. Where I was, I don't know if I really wanted to be back in school, but I think that gave me like the safety and the security and like the like a womb like kind of environment to go back and study just as soon as I like graduated Sarah Lawrence, to be in that environment again. And meanwhile, though, I was like styling on the side and all along, and then took a longer course in the graduate school to start doing my own work.
Yeah, amazing. And it also sounds like, and I feel like this is very true Sarah Lawrence fashion, like also coming at the thing that we end up doing from these like deeper angles of history and really like being immersed in the long trajectory of a canon of work of like where things came from. And I think, you can learn to drape and do all of that, but it's so fun to sort of have this historical background and context and to like study the history and trajectory of a craft. And it sounds like that is more of an angle that you took, and that, again, like that holistic view. And also coming into maybe like working with textiles from that installation piece and like being in these other realms that kind of touch on the realm that we want to be in, and then coming in it from a different angle, which I think gives such a unique perspective on whatever is created.
Precisely. I think one of the things that was so incredible was that early on in the class, we discovered like the oldest garments that had been preserved. They've been preserved in a bog in Scotland, and they were able to test the material, and they were dyed with plants, of course. And that was the first like aha moment I had where I was like, oh wow, you could use natural earth-based dyes instead of chemical dyes, where it was wild. It never quite occurred to me, and I don't think it occurs to many people still, that color is mostly synthetic on
Mm.
our
Yeah.
clothing, and therefore even though it has this incredible like resonance vibration that we pick up through our senses, that it's still like synthetic, and that there's also something that's a natural dye and that could perhaps be used in current applications. It didn't like I didn't bring it all together in that moment, but I had that seed awakening, and I would continue to. And of course also I had this incredible opportunity to go into the archives at the museum at FIT and at the Met's Costume Institute and just look at garments, examine them, the structure, the material, and that was such an incredible education for design. And I don't know if design schools even have that on that level. I think
Right.
that we can sometimes visit and use the museums, I would hope, but it was just so much more incredible than I could even imagine. It wasn't even intentional, really. I just was like, okay, let me go back to school. I got invited in and I'm not ready to leave and I want to go deeper. I didn't quite know where that was going to lead me. And also, I came from this mindset, and even though I had this very liberated Sarah Lawrence education of that, no, you have to go to design school. You know, I still am coming
Right.
from older way of doing things where you have to really put the time in, you have to really study. Where now anyone who just can makes a clothing collection. I really felt that even though I had so much education and experience already at that point, in my even early 20s, working for other people in the industry, yeah, that it would take a lot. I would have to go to design school. So I just wasn't even thinking, oh, I'm going to make a collection. That took a lot more time down the road
Yeah.
to get there, but definitely the seeds were planted
I love
in those experiences for sure.
That's amazing. It's so cool. And then kind of moving more into a wave awake and like that vision coming into being, I would love for you to share how the idea like really did emerge, like that path to kind of move into that space, because it does sound like it kind of was this whole experience of being in other aspects of the fashion industry, styling, you're working with clothes, but you're not creating clothes. And I would love to hear about that part.
Yeah, absolutely. I was working for some incredible stylists, like super top stylists, Camilla Nickerson, Antia Winter, incredible stylists that would come through London that would hire me, like Pandas Panos and Alistair Mackey, like really top people. But I was afraid of getting stuck as their assistant, so I really enjoyed just like having them come through and work with them here and there. And I still just had that like independent spirit, although I did pay some more dues and work with other stylists for a bit longer. I also did my own stuff, like on the side, building my own book. But I felt like there was always a little bit of a disconnect for me because it was a collaboration with the photographer, but there was just a lot of different voices in the space, and I really had a clear vision of how I wanted things to like look and what I wanted to express. And there were certain things in the industry at the time that have since been purified around like intense sexual objectification and
Yeah.
just bad ethical practices that like never felt so good to me. And even just like, yeah, the energy in the spaces felt really unhealthy. And I know that a lot has changed, but I just felt a sense of uneasiness. Like, do I want to commit deeper into styling in this world, even though I loved it? And I got such a, incredible inspiration and excitement and like such a creativity fix working with garments in this way. I just wanted to go deeper, but it wasn't until really that I started going deeper into my spiritual journey that I couldn't keep going the way I was. So I was also working for Vice magazine. That was the opportunity I had. And that especially was confrontational with like certain aesthetic and ethical considerations that I had. So I did it. I was like wanting to transform it. I even had some like delusions of grandeur. Like I'm gonna really like make this an incredible space, because they actually ended up buying some British magazines, I believe, like ID, because they wanted it to be like that, and they saw that I had that that I was like involved in those worlds, and they wanted to elevate it, but ultimately it was too soon and not enough. So I
Right.
think that I entered my spiritual journey just because I had always really like naturally been attracted to and awakened to a sense of mysticism and wonder. And
Mm.
then discomfort pushed me deeper into like, we need to do more work here. And so I
Yeah.
did yoga since my early 20s, but it wasn't until I think it was my later 20s that I discovered Kundalini Yoga. And I went so deeply in and was so transformed by the practices, and really felt like a piece of myself I had found that really just so resonated, this level of connecting to source, and that there was practices and a lifestyle. It wasn't just like the kind of surface yoga where you put the leggings on and the, you know, little top and you do your active wear kind of thing and you go into the class and you sweat and you're in and out. It was like truly like a whole lifestyle, and I think that's what really appealed to me, including
Yeah.
this concept of like royalness, and that there was a frequency to connect to and dress accordingly. So I started thinking about, well, what are really spiritual garments? Like, what are ceremonial garments? And it was hard because like yoga, there was so much like, you know, great things that have been done since in the activewear space, and a lot of money to be made, but I just knew it wasn't activewear. I knew it was
Yeah.
clothing that I could wear out in the world, and what and how would that look like. And so I started thinking, but it wasn't until one of the teachers, Gurmukh, said that she said to me, if, and to the whole class, but it really felt like it was really zeroed in on to me at the moment. At least I took it that way. It was like, if it's not working, what you're doing, if it's not aligned with your ethics, it won't work. So just like figure it out now. And that was in our teacher's training. So I did the whole training. And yeah, after that, everything kind of slowly fell away. And it was very clear that I needed to start rethinking my career as a stylist. And so I thought about opening up an online store and having a lot of my like incredible creative friends and their jewelry and their art and their clothing, a few of my friends that are already designing small brands. And I thought, you know, I am so inspired by vintage clothing from my, just always had been, and then got more involved in it through my, you know, fashion textile program, like the different silhouettes, like reference from the 20s and the 30s and the throughout till the 70s and the 90s, even the 90s, of course. And I was like, you know, I want to do a collection of slip dresses. And it was so crazy to think that that wasn't in the market now, because after I began that, and finally did a wave awake, every single designer has slip dresses. There's a million different slip dress brands, but there really wasn't. And I was super aware of all the designers from styling. Like I knew all of them and all the department stores and all the,
Yeah.
you know, style.com was what it was called before Vogue.com absorbed it. Like I knew all the things that were happening. There wasn't really anything current on the market. There was just vintage bias cut slip dresses from Ghost, was another incredible brand that didn't always use silk. Some of them were synthetics. And so I had this insight about the natural dyes. It came back to me from the grad school course. Yeah. First I was like hand dye techniques. And then it was like, wait, natural, botanical. Like I'm interested in herbs. I'm interested in natural living. Like why would I use synthetics? And so what initially was just like, oh, I'm going to do a couple slips for the online store, became a whole collection, and the online store just fell away. So yeah. And there was a lot of different angels around who kind of stepped in, and one friend, Brian, who I still am working with actually again and trying to do some production in India, he was like, I'm going to do your patterns. I was like, well, no, I'm not ready yet. He's like, no, we're going to start. Let's just do a couple. We'll see what happens. And so that was very clear that that was what I was meant to do. The passion was there. And yeah, I started just putting together the collection, working with an incredible dyer, Jane Palmer, who I'm still friends with, who shifted her business into other types of dyes and on an industry level. But at that time, she was this incredible angel and would work tirelessly to get these incredible colors And so, yeah, I did the first collection. And from my background, I just knew how to, you know, cast a bunch of beautiful girls and do a fashion show. And so we did a presentation in New York City in a gallery, and it all just like really came together. And yeah, it was a really dream come true. And those early days were like, yeah, just beyond magic.
Yeah. Wow. That's so amazing. And it really was like I'm feeling into the energy of that time, and the world was so different in so many ways. And it is so crazy to think that like slip dresses were not a thing, really wasn't on the market, and complete whole. If you go back and like look at collections and everything from that time, it wasn't part of the conversation. And it's so amazing that you were just so on it and so in that realm in like a very particular way, also again like merging, having that interdisciplinary thing of the spirituality and of, yeah, fashion, and creating something, and then the natural piece, and like bringing it all together to create a wave awake, and like the images, and as you have such a beautiful aesthetic and so pristine and precise, and bringing that vision to life is so cool. And to hear that story, and it's beautiful and exciting. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, now it makes sense too because I've invited some stylists to come in here and there, but like ultimately the collection was created pre-styled.
Yeah.
Everything was the colors coming together, the way everything would look. So yeah, that was really bringing together all those years were like by no means wasted. It never is. They never are.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so it was a really exciting time, and my friend Arden wore pieces out to an event, and the market editor at the time, Meredith Melling Burke, who was really a big proponent of sustainability, was like, "What are you wearing to Arden?" And she's like, "A wave awake. My friend makes it. It's all natural." I don't even know if she mentioned the plant eyes, but then it was in vogue for a while. And one of the funniest things is apparently Anna Wintour said like because they brought some to the meeting to like approve, she has to approve everything, of course, and she said like, "What is this? Oh, wave awake. What is this?" So I thought that that was so cool. My friend who was working, Stella, who was working for Grace Coddington, brought that up to me, and she was the one that was like, I saw her out. I wasn't really going out that much at that time. I was such a Kundalini yogi, but I went to some New York like fashion thing, and then she said, "Yeah, you're." And when I had a full page kind of come out, she was like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, it's a full page," because I assumed it was a collar, and I was like, "Still, this is amazing validation that I'm getting, a collar of my first collection in the beauty story." It was actually like so much more than I could have ever imagined. There was a lot of flow, a lot of synchronicity.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
one thing is, I think that it hit a chord with the style, and I think the concept of sustainability. But what was interesting is that it's still this plant eye piece would kind of come later. It's more emerging that more
Mhm.
people were talking about and using it. I think maybe also I was like not always leading with it.
Mhm.
I was given the advice actually at a conference I went to in England early on of sustainability. They were like, lead with the style, which is not a bad advice, but it was like the style speaks first, then the message. And then I actually think
Mhm.
something happened in culture where fashion became more about the message first. So it's just interesting, to track it all and see, and yeah, just to keep going in spite of all the changes in the industry and trends and whatnot. But definitely hit a chord because it was featured a lot because the aesthetic was what was desired again. The slip dresses, the '70s silhouettes that are constantly coming back, but the way in which they came back and have really stayed consistent has been has been really interesting.
Yeah, I love all of that so much, and it's all just so true, and really remembering that era. And I love the piece of Kundalini being a part of this. Like I know that there's sort of a lot of people in our sphere who have really like tuned into their vision and their work in the world through Kundalini. Like that's true for me, that's true for, yeah, just a lot of different people that I know. Really, like there's something that comes through of being able to connect to kind of like what we're meant to do and get those downloads and visions. Like it really opens the channels and opens the gate and really provides that opportunity to like have embodied inspiration. Like the way it lands, you're like, oh, of course. Like it's such a different feeling, I think, than anything else. So I love that that was a piece of this too. Um,
Yeah, a huge piece of the journey. And it was also an exciting time. And I think, it was like leading up to this
yeah,
this concept of 2012, and also
right.
the frequencies were a lot different. I think leading up to, I think it was, for me, it really saw the shift in 2017, 16, 17. But up until then, it was just like such kind of magic and flow, and possibility.
Yeah,
And yeah, it was very supportive of all those practices and
amazing. And it
vision.
sounds like there was like that natural flow of like doors opening, things happening, those angels and collaborators that sort of like come in at the right time. And I want to go more into that sort of like the being a business owner, being a woman, having this vision that you're working toward, and then those waves that come of like the waves where we feel really guided and really supported. And then also, even I think if you're pursuing a vision that's meant for you, there's moments where nothing's working. Everything is like you're hitting walls left and right. And it's just such a journey of being in business. I feel like it's one of the biggest like growth edges and actual spiritual practices, especially being a woman and creating a really beautiful, like heart-centered, creative, amazing business. So I would love if you could speak a little bit to that and like whatever your experience has been in that realm.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's so interesting, and some women have it really on lock, like they have a very balanced masculine, inner masculine. And that's interesting because the dreaming life awake work is really that. It's looking into our animus, as Young called it, and really working with that to see where our blocks are, and what's going on with what we can't see that's just lurking in the shadow, and how to like get to it using the archetypes. And we can go into that later. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there,
Yeah, yeah.
but I feel that I hadn't really developed it enough, and so I never really did a business plan. I never had a deck. I was really in using and into the feminine power path. So
Mm,
trusting my intuition. Not that I couldn't, do a spreadsheet or, you know, organize things in a way that I was able to economize to an extent. I had a sales showroom, and they would take the orders, and we would be able to ship mostly on time to the stores. But I think it was a lot to hold. And I always have this kind of sense like, if you're a business owner and you're doing it alone, it's like you breathe a certain way, and that affects your business. And the more you have people, with you on the ground, or maybe in the air everywhere, but like
yeah,
you're not the only one holding it. So I think when I had like a team of assistants, that was really inspiring. When I think of as like the sewers and the dyers, and everyone is part of the process, then it's not just only on your shoulders. But I feel that there's a lot of challenges that people don't expect when they're in a creative industry, when other people are also making it. So if you're making it yourself, your time, of course, and your energy, you have to like figure that out. But when you're relying and expecting on other people to produce things that you've envisioned and created, there's a lot of like giving up control and trusting.
yeah,
And it's a beautiful practice, and it doesn't always work out that way. I've had experiences where I had like a meeting with Barney's, and the woman I was working with for years told me everything would be ready, no problem. And I show up to the atelier, and nothing is ready, or having something shipped from Bali, and it's like completely wrong, and it's silk and it's plant dyed. And these are very expensive materials, So there's been so many challenges. I can't tell
yeah,
you, but I know that it's like not giving up. And I think it's really working with creating the structure and having it both inside you and outside of you. And I don't know that I always did the best job of it in the beginning. There was so much flow and magic that I just went with it. And I think there's this juncture, like where you get to it and you're like, oh, what's my plan? And so I think that I've had um, a way of always trying to think creatively and think of like, okay, what can I do next? What's the next step? So whether that's like hiring a business coach to try to guide you through, creating actually systems.
Mhm.
When I finally launched online, which was during COVID, that was like such a long time coming. I mean, most people would never think about having a brand that wasn't readily available online. But in the
Right.
beginning, I still thought like, oh, well, I have to go on this way in which like it's about the stores and the stores promote the collection and I'm
Mhm.
not competing with the stores. And then that like quickly shifted that mindset. It was only because I did have like, it's like the disadvantage and the benefit of being in the industry for so long, where there
Right.
was a certain way people did things. So it's like quickly adapting and moving to change things. And the time in Bali during the pandemic was incredible because I was really there on the ground for 2.5 years solid, really, where I
Mhm.
was like working with the suppliers, where I was there not just for a couple months at a time, but I was living the lifestyle in Bali along with, my small teeny team. So
Yeah.
that was incredible. But I really would say that like having structure and support, and things that are typically considered kind of masculine realm,
Mhm.
um, to develop that within oneself as a woman, or having those support systems outside yourself that you can teach and learn, learn and grow from them. Because I felt that I kind of didn't want to handle everything, and there's a lot of fatigue that comes from doing all of it.
Yes.
And so I think that I've like probably wasted a lot of time and energy resisting some of that, and wanting someone to come save me and the business at different times in my life, if I'm honest. And it wasn't until I really took radical responsibility, over and over again, because you can take it once and then you have to like recommit and do it again, that I feel like I got to a place of like, okay, this is where I'm at with it. It may not be as big as I had envisioned. And I'm sort of waiting because I think that just like any journey, it's like you have to trust the right time for something to grow and when it wants to be expressed. And like, I feel that, I can fully see that in how long certain things have taken. Um, and then just, you just keep going and you allow the collection to be the size and the shape that it wants to be. The business, sorry, not just the collection, and the collection, that
Right.
you really like listen to it and see like, does this want to be this big brand, and can it be? And a lot of the limitations of doing things super ethically, truly organically, truly naturally, it may not allow for it to become something as large as, you think it should be.
Mm.
So it's really listening and being in process with it. I think that, I'm really proud of it, and yet am I like the best businesswoman? Probably not. I don't really think super strategically. I have like sometimes a lot of discomfort in selling a product. Like I
Yeah.
just want it to sell itself. And it's
Yeah.
harder when it's a high price point. And then if people don't get it, like if they don't get why silk, why plant dyes, and they don't see it as an investment, um, I can't make them. I'm not I'm just not a hustler. There's nothing hustle about me.
Oh.
So, I have to just be authentic to me, because if I ever try to push that way of being, it just doesn't work. We all know like we have like certain design, we're a certain design, right? And
Yeah.
so it is like having partnership and like using your network, of people to co-create together to support each other, and really opening up to that, I think, is the way to remedy like and understands one's aptitudes and deficiencies.
Yeah.
So I feel like now I'm in a place of like not beating myself up for not being that type A person, not being super business minded, and yet still like honoring the fact that I am a businesswoman. I created a
Yeah.
product and I've survived all this time. And yeah, it still might become something else with, outside support and structure. but
Mm.
I'm just kind of midwifing it, as it is in the way that it wants to be currently in its current incarnation, basically.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So much wisdom and so many gems and like that inner masculine and feminine, the structure and the flow. And it does really sound like you have really created such an incredible business and offering in so many beautiful garments from a very feminine place, which I think like is really challenging to do in such a like masculine world. And like business is like in this country and in the way we think of it in a lot of ways is so masculine. And so it's really amazing you have your story as an example of like things can still work without that structure. And as you said, like at some point there needs to be structure. It's finding that balance, but trusting like your innate who you are, trusting that like you can build something from that place of your natural tendencies, not being like a total girl boss hustler and still creating an amazing line, still building a business that has been like profound and something that has supported you and created so much beauty in the world and like you're running it. You've done it for a long time. So I
Yes.
love having that example and like knowing that that is out there and that you can still create from that place. Because I think a lot of people are like, well, my innate self is this, but you have to be like this in order to do something.
Yes, and I think it's really really good to kind of peel back the story, the founder story, and seeing like what was in place and what was the intention, what
Yeah.
support was in place for that person, and kind of what did they create, what did they want to create, and kind of not judge yourself from
Mm.
what you think it should be or should become, and sort of just surviving and not giving up is sort of the true test because it's like soul deep. This is
Yeah.
not like a vanity project. This is like a soul deep offering.
Yes.
And, hopefully people can feel that. And also, like any relationship with yourself, with someone else, there's like, all different periods of, highs and lows and periods of like major inspiration and feeling stuck too. And I feel like those are the people that I want to talk to who've
Yeah.
come through that. Because if you've only just rode the wave of success, great. Like maybe you can teach me something, but if that's not like my karma with my
Yeah.
work life, then I don't know that I'm going to really be able to do much with it. Like I want to know about all these different chapters that you've been through. And so, yeah, there's been a lot of winging it too when it
Yeah.
comes to like different things and learning, just really being open and interested to learning the process. So even though I was in the industry for so long on the creative visual making side, of course I didn't quite know how to produce, and it still like surprises me the challenges that come up even after doing it for now like almost 14 years.
Wow.
So it's wild. And still making changes. Like right now we're like, okay, these underwear that we started launching in I think 2021, they really need to be reinforced now, like the elastic, something so simple, and it's like such a big shift. And we'll be rolling out this new design, which is just like covering something simple because it just no longer was working. It started out working and no longer like testing it out myself and getting feedback from clients. I think customer service and connection is so important. And yeah, making these little variations and changes. And I haven't done a full collection in years, several years. I'm just redoing pieces that people love in the meantime until it's time again when I'm in less transition. Because it's interesting, you can get away with a lot when you're younger and like moving and flowing. And my business was like fully done while being nomadic. I wasn't
Yeah.
really in one place for very long, but now it's really requiring me to ground and settle a bit much more to then see what's next.
Yeah.
You know, and I
And
would love to do like a full collection like I used to again. So
yeah,
hopefully that's on the horizon.
that would be amazing. Yeah, and I think like the other thing that you've really been speaking to is, and I'm really like passionate and sort of obsessed with visions and like the things this juxtaposition between like what we see for ourselves and this vision that we have for our lives and our work and what we want to create and do, and then also the realm of reality and how in so many ways like I do think our visions are like these beacons pulling us forward, yet it's not always what we thought it would be. Like we usually are touching on pieces of it, and I'm hearing you speak to that in a lot of different ways. And like with businesses, I think, and projects or just creative things in general, like they also have a life of their own and like want to be something, and we have to be in this relationship with them. And it's so interesting to get, yeah, to just hear you speaking to like sometimes we think it's going to be one thing and then it's another, and being in like the surrender and the flow of creation. I think this is why business building is one of the most spiritual practices to me, if you take it as such. Like it will show you so much about yourself and will show you like what it wants to be, and you have to kind of go with that and move with those ebbs and flows of creation.
1,000%. Like it's so interesting that I hit a nerve in that moment when people were just starting to talk about sustainability even as a conversation, and now then it kind of became something else, and there's like greenwashing, although it's amazing because there's now industry standards like so like the whole conversation has been raised, and yet a lot of things have not been like really addressed. Like we didn't quite have
Mhm.
this, mass awakening that we thought it would look a certain way, and it actually instead looks like a different way than it is. Just like, you know, I thought maybe, well, I didn't really think much. I was just wanting to create a collection like the way that I was a stylist. It was just
Yeah.
creating. It wasn't really thinking of business, how to operate business and like what that meant. There was no one, crunching numbers and creating projections for me. And yet I know that to a certain extent, that kind of structure does help people have like, when you have goals and you have landmarks and things to kind of adhere to in a path. And instead, yeah, it's been a very flowing path that's been like, it's been I've moved to certain places because of, potential romantic interest. And then it happened to align that there was, or vice versa, that there was a dye house or just a place I had a vision about, like Bali. I always envisioned this place that was like Bali, and I never could quite imagine that it could even exist this way. It was
Mm.
like living a dream life in many ways, and
Yeah.
and that has its positive and negative, aspects to it too. But 1,000%, I think that everything has its timing. Like just because you want to be in the relationship and start the family, and for your business to be a certain way, not everything exists just because we want it to. Even though there is this realm of manifestation, and we're going to call in all these incredible experiences, they're mostly to grow and for our our soul to have these lessons and to expand into ourselves, so to have kind of a little bit like less attachment at the same time doing the work, right? So it's definitely a lot to balance, but I never could look at it than other than anything. I could let me redo that. I couldn't look at it as anything other than a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
Probably because I was so deep in my spiritual practice when I founded the business,
Yeah.
that, Gurmukh gave me that advice that it wouldn't work unless it was, my ethics were in alignment. So I knew that that all had to be set in place. And now I think this next realm is how to strengthen more this structure with the business for it to grow. And I think there's been a lot of resistance with that, and hence kind of scaling back to move forward. And I think that's always um, a great thing. Like, why do so many businesses fail? Because they kind of sometimes they grow too fast, too big,
Yeah.
with too much, pushing instead of actually just like listening and, letting it unfold, and, being humble. And I think like one of the things I think that's really interesting is a lot of people for a period of time love to tell me that people were copying me, or that, this person's using plant eyes. And there was a moment where I kind of got a bit caught up, because
Mm.
this feeling that like this opportunity was passing me by to grow, and everyone else was getting on it, and a lot of these people had like men actually in the business, like family members or partners, and they were driving that. And it's incredible, what a blessing that these other designers had that. I did not have that. That wasn't my journey. So I was just kind of navigating, journeying on my own. And yeah, a lot of people don't talk about that. There's always this like sexy female founder, and is she really doing it all alone, all along? Like, I hope not, because I have in many
Right.
ways, and I don't think it's like for the faint of heart. And that's just,
Yeah.
you know, my own, attract where my own attractions led me, my own karma, my own way. And, it is what it is. And so really letting go of that attachment that it should be a certain way, and also being pulled by these sort of these mental traps that you should be doing something other way, where you founded something, you started something, and then and you're being left in the wake by all these super intense supported entrepreneurs, and just staying in your lane, like, this is my offering, and it wants to be what it wants to be. And then getting into midlife, you go, okay, wait, like, is this even what I meant to do? And what are the other pieces that I could pick up that I could use to integrate to, like, really have a fulfilling life? Because that's ultimately what we're here to do. My current partner, and I joke that we, like, probably quote unquote awakened too soon. Neither of us feel like we had an awakening per se. We always felt like it was just our nature, that we were already open to things, but that we had these life experiences that thrust us into spiritual practice and awareness way before we got our, earth material trips, like,
Mhm.
sorted. Because, sometimes it's just like, how awesome just to be sort of motivated by the material and then have an awakening with
Right.
all this material awareness and knowledge. I feel like I just never quite could grasp that, and yet had deep trust that, like, it'll all work out. It always does.
Mm.
And just keep going. But
Yeah.
yes, I will say that some advice I ignored, maybe almost 10 years ago, was about strengthening my inner masculine.
Mm.
And I was so resistant. I just wanted to be this creature of flow and trust,
Yeah.
and, hope that that structure could come from outside myself. And whenever we want something like that and we're not willing to take full responsibility, the universe will most definitely test us in
Yeah.
that way. And so I think I've had to go through some of those trials, and now I really get it. Like, this work
Mm.
is 1,000% necessary.
Yeah.
If it's not innately developed, and then maybe if it's not developed, maybe other people have to develop their feminine qualities more strongly in this day and age from all the influences, but had a sort of a different journey with that. And so that's really what now I'm working on teaching. And it's like, of course, naturally I can invite a woman into her feminine embodiment through the consciousness of the clothing and adornment, and, like,
Mm.
everything I innately know and have practiced, that I like to practice. But now what I had to do was sort of, it's in line with my Ayurvedic training. It's that there's that principle that like attracts like, but it's the opposite that brings the balance, right?
Mm.
So that's where the animus work and strengthening one's inner masculine, and working with that, those archetypes are what's bringing balance and healing to me, as an individual, and also to my business.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, so there's just so much richness in that experience and everything that you're sharing that I really hope is really supportive for others to hear of the journey, like the arc of life, and really like being in the different phases and navigating it. And yeah, there's so many pieces. And yeah, we're segueing into kind of like the next section, which is where your work is moving now and how you've kind of like come to this new threshold and this new stage and more parts of you emerging and that you're bringing into being. So I'd love to hear more about that and what's happening in that world and the offerings that you're cultivating now.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think it was always emerging for me. Like I've been studying as like a nerd all my life. I've been
Mhm.
studying a lot of other things on the side, and fashion itself, like I had lost interest in really following it. I was so immersed in it and such a part of it, and then have seen the limitations of the industry, of course. And so the other parts of myself that I kind of left behind in terms of a career that I had studied at Sarah Lawrence started
Mhm.
coming to me, and I was like, wait, I need to tune in deeper because this is not, inspiring me enough. So how can it be inspiring these, the women that, wear my clothes and follow my work? So I went deep into studying Ayurveda. I've taken
Mhm.
2 courses now and certified in the coaching in that realm. And then, yeah, felt that it was more than just the body, although that was so important, is embodiment, awareness of spirit and health and holistic healing in that way. And I had a couple experiences that really pushed me, specifically in doing women's retreats, that I became part
Mhm.
of that. And I just saw what was missing for me was that like I needed to learn how to become a deeper space holder because in these environments so much comes up in the field, so much
Yeah.
unconscious material. And what are we doing when this stuff comes up and no one knows how to hold and guide it? Because we're going deep in the womb, and we're doing womb work and tuning into the energetics of that, and healing our hearts and doing all these incredible kriyas. But if we're not actually also attending to the subconscious and the psyche, then we're
Mhm.
missing a huge piece. And
Yeah.
so I really felt like this is the work I need to do. Like, this is the space that feels unoccupied that I need to go deeper into. And so that's when I got really interested in Jungian psychology, exploring that realm, and studying it and finishing up a year long training about a year ago. And then since doing self study and apprenticeship, and working with people to, for lack of a better word, coach. I'm not a coach. I don't have like a stopwatch and a timer and a whistle. I'm a guide, so it's like I'm putting on the like plant-dyed silk robe, and I have like the
Mhm.
lantern, and we're going into these like unseen realms and seeing like what's projection, like what archetypes are we embodying, which ones are we not, and so all this shadow work, archetype work, is super supportive in addition to all the other tools that we have, like, you know, some psychedelic medicine, active imagination supported through that, like dream work. So, Dreaming Life Awake is really now taking this subconscious content and awakening to it and realizing that, like, this is all a dream of our creation. We're
Mhm.
living it, we're waking up to it, and so how can we best um, navigate it and become aware of it so that we can work through these blind spots? Because I myself was feeling super frustrated. In Bali, I did so much like esoteric, deep healing, working with priestesses, seeing this medicine man and that woman and that man, like doing
Mhm.
so much to like release and heal. And it
Yeah.
was also powerful, but it was not getting at this this piece that I feel like I'm still working with, but that once I started going deep with, that I'm able to really unlock and uncover a lot that was in my way, a lot that was blocking me from
Mhm.
having some of the things that I really wanted to have. Like, more like in having, I mean experiences, not things, but
Yeah.
these experiences that now I'm having. So super grateful for
Mhm.
having some of that struggle that led me to
Yeah.
this work and going deeper with that. So not leaving a wave awake and clothing behind. There's so much to tune into with the plant frequencies, with color,
Yeah.
but it's bringing also this consciousness piece in to do the work that I feel that I was meant to do beyond my guilty pleasure of fashion.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, yeah, that integrating all of the things too, and continuing with all of who you are and
Yeah.
developing that and offering that, and it's really exciting and beautiful. And like, I think that planetarily, like we are in such a transition time. And I think everyone I know is like moving through really big transitions and looking for, yeah, just their own coming into contact with their own selves in much deeper ways as sort of a stabilizing force as the external is moving a lot. Like there's just so much shifting, and I don't think we know how any of the pieces are going to land right now. And
No.
so, yeah, I think it's so powerful of you stepping into that realm and offering support in that realm and coming into kind of this whole world that sounds like it's always been really alive for you and really there, and just having new expressions of it and new iterations of it be birthed from you and with them, and like that vision creation process unfolding always, like it is always kind of this next blooming of something new. And you said earlier like midwifing a wave awake into being, and I see that as like such a way of being with businesses, being with offering solutions. Like they want to be born, and we are here to kind of like find our relationship with what that is and bring that vision into some form.
Yeah, and it's really something that becomes unavoidable as we move towards midlife. It can hit us
Mm.
through so many different junctures in our life, through crisis points that we have. But I feel like right now, especially, we're all super, our attention is being so fractured by so many things potentially.
Yeah,
And how do we actually go inward and focus on the disconnections, the wars inside ourselves, the things that we actually can control and contribute positively
yeah,
to actually like reflect peace in the world and prosperity and alignment. We have to do that work inside. There's really very little that we can do outside of ourselves that we, you know, can do outside. If this is an inside job,
yeah,
and so this isn't attended to in the deepest way, we are being performative, and that never feels good. And so I think that like I'm hearing like Carl Jung being brought up again and again. I think it's not a coincidence that I was led to him and the work and bringing it back from my early studies of Sarah Lawrence through
yeah,
all the years till now, and doing it in a really interesting kind of holistic way with Eastern thought and spirituality and guiding people. So yeah, so I think it's essential that everyone is doing this work now. I think it's going to be coming for all of us, that we need to look at it because right, the collective unconscious is looming large, and we've
yeah,
got to kind of get back in here to make sense of everything out there and like return to story and create our story in a the most conscious way we can. So
yeah.
that's what I am showing up for these days, and I'm excited to start going deeper with that work and offering, more courses and conversations. First and foremost, working with people one on one, and then eventually rolling out more support in the form of teaching and mentoring in that way.
Amazing. Yeah, and so powerful and needed in these times, as you were just mentioning, that collective unconscious, I think, really felt like we're all finding our way to it and through it and within ourselves is kind of like the only pathway to transforming the whole.
Yeah. I mean, really think we thought without really knowing that we would be more like liberated and awakened. Like the word "awake, awake." It was like, oh, I'm seeing it. We're all awakening, and
Yeah,
it's not that we're not. We are, but it's not necessarily as pretty of as a path, as pretty of a path that we had maybe imagined. It's a lot more heavy and complex sometimes, although we have lots of tools to make it a little bit more pleasurable and enjoyable, and to bring eros into the journey. There's no reason why we can't, even when we're navigating these dark waters and these challenging times, we can't keep eros alive, and in the form of how we feed ourselves, how we clothe ourselves, and
yeah,
how we dance with the world out there. So I feel like 1,000%, we'll get through with just a little bit more of that
yes.
energy.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I'm so with you. I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I'm just right on the wave you're on. Um, yeah, I guess like just in closing, if you have any thoughts or advice or words to share with someone who's kind of like just starting out on their journey or in like a sticky part or just kind of transitioning or navigating life and like anything that you've spoken to it throughout this conversation, but sort of any closing words in that realm of like cultivating visions and bringing them into being.
Yes, I feel like trusting yourself as to where you've been guided and why you've been guided there. Really being open and receptive to the different energies, the little signs and the synchronicities that come up on your path to follow them. But also sometimes trusting, right, that it's not always the exact time and that you're being shown a piece of the puzzle and that it may not come until like way later. Also, developing structure within yourself so that you might meet it in a healthy way outside of yourself. Um, and just really like tuning into like your soul's truth. Like, what does your soul really want to experience here? And not being afraid of that, but not feeling this pressure always of it has to become this, it needs to be that. Like listening to what something wants to become. And staying open and not being limited by things like, age, whether you're super young starting out or, you're at this midlife juncture and you're feeling like, oh, I don't know if I'm relevant anymore. So it can come up at any point. I've heard people say like, I can't believe it. I'm in my late 20s and I'm like, I don't know. Can I start again? It's like, of course, I didn't even found a wave awake until I was 33. So, you know, there's plenty of time. And then this new incarnation at midlife, what is midlife anymore? But like in my 40s, yeah, it's like keep staying inspired, keep being nourished by beautiful experiences and beautiful people, and stay conscious and don't get caught up and trapped by all the things out there that are meant to distract you and keep you from true connection. And yeah,
I love that. That's all
follow what is it?
so
Yeah.
powerful. And like, yeah, I'm taking it in too. And I really agree with you. And I think that that listening piece to like like that listening and really stepping out of like the forcing and the pushing and like seeing the vision, seeing the pieces and holding them lightly and listening
Mhm.
to like what is actually being asked. Because I think we often have an agenda that is coming from the ego, from like certain parts of us that are more isolated, and like sinking into that soul piece and listening from a soul level and shepherding our lives from that deeper place, I think is essential, especially in these times.
Yeah, because like, I don't know if you define success as like, creating something, having a big win where you like sell it and like have all this money. Like, great, that's beautiful if that's what is meant to be for your karma, your experience. But maybe your experience is just to like create something, nourish it and nurture it like a mother does,
Yeah.
and see what it wants to become, how it wants to grow. That's obviously more of like a feminine form way. It doesn't mean it's better. It doesn't mean it's where it just is what it is, and there's merit to that, because no one, who's to say that how success is defined and what is success. Like it's really being balanced and happy and finding yourself in a sweet, beautiful environment with loving relationships. And it's not that I don't have still visions of things becoming more expanded and growing still. I think my A Wave Awake baby is now say 14. So who's to know what she will become, as
A whole new world.
as she ventures into her teenage years. So
Oh,
so
that's so
we'll
cool.
see.
Amazing. Well, do you have anything else you want to add or share?
No, just thank you so much, Ayla, for your thoughtful questions. And I love that we met in the Central Park and had a meeting like
Yeah.
decade ago and connected, because I really felt like that we were going to know each other and interact in certain ways at some point. So it's interesting and so amazing how cool it is to see you on your journey and what you're doing in conscious business creation. So thank you so much.
Yes, I know. I'm so glad that we met all those years ago and like our lives have kind of weaved in and out and we now kind of like have yeah, more friends and more contacts in common and it's a sweet world and life to be weaving. So
Yes.
thank you so much for joining and for being here and super grateful.
Thank you for having me. More soon, I hope.
Yes.